Theoretical physicist Richard Feynman was born in New York City in 1918 and died of cancer in Los Angeles in 1988. During an extraordinary life, his highly original approach to physics won him a Nobel Prize. He was a legendary teacher, spending 30 years at Caltech, and he was anything but the stereotypical scientist, leading a life full of escapades and wild adventures.
Feynman was a magician. With an ordinary genius, well, he does very good work, and it's not easy to do this kind of work, but you can imagine that if you try very hard, you could do similar work and get to a similar answer. But with a magician, you just don't know how he does it.
I had a conversation about flying saucers some years ago with laymen. Because I'm scientific, I know all about flying saucers. So I said, I don't think there are flying saucers. So my antagonist said, is it impossible that there are flying saucers? Can you prove that it's impossible? I said, no, I can't prove it's impossible. It's just very unlikely. That, they say, you are very unscientific. If you can't prove it impossible, then how can you say it's likely, that it's unlikely? Well, that's the way, that is scientific. It is scientific only to say what's more likely and less likely, and not to be proving all the time possible and impossible. To define what I mean, I finally said to him, listen, I mean that from my knowledge of the world that I see around me, I think that it is much more likely that the reports of flying saucers are the result of the known irrational characteristics of terrestrial intelligence rather than the unknown rational efforts of extraterrestrial intelligence. Now I'm going to discuss how we would look for a new law. In general, we look for a new law by the following process. First, we guess it. Then we so don't laugh, that's what's really true. Then we compute the consequences of the guess to see if this is right, if this law that we guessed is right, we see what it would imply, and then we compare those computation results to nature, or we say compare to experiment or experience, compare it directly with observation to see if it works. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. And that simple statement is the key to science. It doesn't make a difference how beautiful your guess is. It doesn't make a difference how smart you are who made the guess or what his name is. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. That's all there is to it.
When you're thinking about something you don't understand, you have a terrible, uncomfortable feeling called confusion. It's a very difficult and unhappy business. And so most of the time, you're rather unhappy, actually, with this confusion. You can't penetrate this thing. Now, the confusion is because we're all some kind of apes that are kind of stupid, working against this, trying to figure out to put the two sticks together to reach the banana, and we can't quite make it, the idea. And I get that feeling all the time that I'm an ape trying to put the two sticks together. So I always feel stupid. Once in a while, though, the sticks go together on me, and I reach the banana.
And the kid said to me, say, what's that bird? What's the name of it? Do you know the name of that bird? I says, I haven't the slightest idea. He said, well, it's a brown-throated thrush. He says, your father doesn't teach you anything. But my father had already taught me about the names of birds. Once we walked and he says, that's a brown-throated thrush. He says, know what the name of that bird is? A brown-throated thrush. In German, it's called a Flügelflögel. In Chinese, it's called a qinglongtong. In Japanese, a tohara, and so on. And when you know all the names in every language of that bird, you know nothing, but absolutely nothing about the bird. And then we would go on and talk about the pecking and the feathers. So I had learned already that names don't constitute knowledge. It's knowing the name of something. That's caused me a certain trouble since, because I refuse to learn the name of anything. So when someone comes in and says, you got any explanation for the Fitz-Conan experiment? I says, what's that? He says, you know, that the long-lived K-meson disintegrates into 2 pies. Oh, yes, now I know. But I never know the names of things. What he forgot to tell me was that knowing the names of things is useful if you want to talk to somebody else. but it's curiosity as to where we are, what we are. It's very much more exciting to discover we're on a ball, half of it sticking upside down. It's spinning around in space. It's a mysterious force which holds us on. It's going around a great big glob of gas that's burning fueled by a fire that's completely different than the fire, any fire we can make. Well, now we can make that fire, nuclear fire. But that's a much more exciting story to many people than the tales which other people used to make up who worried about the universe, that we were living on the back of a turtle or something like that. They were wonderful stories, but the truth is so much more remarkable. And so what's the pleasure in physics is that, to me, is that as it's revealed, the truth is so remarkable, so amazing. And I have this disease, and many other people who have studied far enough to begin to understand a little of how things work are fascinated by it. And this fascination drives them on. If you give me the right man in any field, I can talk to him. I know what the condition is. That he did whatever he did as far as he can go. That he studied every aspect of it as far as he has stretched himself to the end. He's not a dilettante in any way. But so he talked deep as far as he can go, and therefore he's up against mysteries all the way around the edge. And awe. And we can talk about mystery and awe. That's what we have in common.
The question of whether or not when you see something, you see only the light or you see the thing you're looking at is one of those dopey philosophical things that an ordinary person has no difficulty with. Even the most profound philosopher, in sitting eating his dinner, has many difficulty making out that what he looks at perhaps might be only the light from the steak, but it still implies the existence of the steak, which he's able to lift by the fork to his mouth. The philosophers that were unable to make that analysis and that idea have fallen by the wayside through hunger.
A poet, I think it is, who once said, "The whole universe is in a glass of wine." I don't know, I don't think we'll ever know in what sense he meant that. For the poets don't write to be understood. But it is true that if you look at a glass of wine closely enough, you will see the entire universe. There are the things of physics, the twisting liquid, the reflections in the glass, and our imagination adds the atoms. It evaporates, depending on the wind and weather. The glass is a distillation of the Earth's rocks. And in its composition, as we've seen, the secret of the universe's age and the evolution of the stars. What strange array of chemicals are in the wine? How did they come to be? There are the ferments, the enzymes, the substrates, and the products. And there in wine was found the great generalization. All life is fermentation. Nor can you discover the chemistry of wine without discovering, as did Pasteur, the cause of much disease. How vivid is the claret, pressing its existence into the consciousness that watches it. And if our small minds, for some convenience, divides this glass of wine, this universe, into parts, to physics, biology, geology, astronomy, psychology, and all, remember that nature doesn't know it. So we should put it all back together and not forget at last what it's for. Let it give us one final pleasure more. Drink it up and forget about it all.
You see, one thing is I can live with doubt and uncertainty and not knowing. I think it's much more interesting to live not knowing than to have answers which might be wrong. I have approximate answers and possible beliefs and different degrees of certainty about different things, but I'm not absolutely sure of anything. And then many things I don't know anything about, such as whether it means anything to ask, why we're here, and what the question might mean. I might think about it a little bit. If I can't figure it out, then I go to something else. But I don't have to know an answer. I don't feel frightened by not knowing things, by being lost in the mysterious universe without having any purpose, which is the way it really is as far as I can tell, possibly. It doesn't frighten me.